Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to the Mental Wellness Wake Up Show, a weekly podcast where growth minded, creative people come to learn best practices from both spirituality and psychology that create lasting well being. I am your host, mental wellness expert, improvised acting teacher, therapist, and coach, Dawn McMillan. Let's get to it. What I want to talk about today is the topic that inspired the Stop Forcing Yourself episode. So, to review, I've been studying family constellations and internal family systems, and there is a lot of overlap between these two types of therapy. But I couldn't quite get a handle on why I was feeling so compelled to talk about them or do so in any form or fashion that makes sense. So, after just setting it aside for a little bit, I finally want to share with you one piece of what these two different therapeutic approaches have in common and hopefully give it to you in a way that makes it useful in your life. But before I get to that, I want to say thank you for reaching out to me on the socials about the episodes. I love it if you could leave me a voice memo. It's so exciting to hear your voices. DM me at the Dawn McMillan on the socials or email me, whatever you want to do. I really love to hear from you. And it means so much to me that you listen. And I love it when you give me a review on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you're listening. Make sure to like and subscribe. And please share any episode that you think, that was interesting, with at least one other person, because that helps us get the word out and build our community. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, internal family systems, family constellations. What are these? Okay, so internal family systems is a therapy developed by family therapist Richard Schwartz, who noticed how many of his patients would speak about themselves as having parts. Like, well, one part of me wants this and another part of me wants that. And he started to work with individuals by conceiving the mind as a family, and that you start to work with an individual as if each part of them is a member of a family. So you begin to see an individual human being as actually being a system. And I think we can all relate to that, right? Where you're like, on the one hand, I feel this, and on the other hand, I feel that. On the one hand, I like this, and on the other hand, I don't like that. And so internal family systems acknowledges that we are all full of parts, that we have a whole family, a whole committee, a whole village inside of us. And some parts are helpful and are using good skills, some parts are not. Some parts are young, some parts are old. So that's internal family systems. Looking inside an individual for the family system within them. Now, family constellations was developed by Bert Hellinger, and that form of therapy recognizes that the struggle in an individual can be based on patterns within their external family system, that patterns and beliefs and function and dysfunction that are being experienced by the individual could have their roots in the family system into which this person was born and or grew up. So, for example, epigenetics has shown that grandchildren of Holocaust survivors have different gene expression related to scarcity and starvation. There was a study done on people in the Netherlands about the grandchildren of people who faced starvation, had a different genetic profile based on their grandparents' suffering. So you can pick your own adventure about whether it's nature or nurture, but there's any number of ways to acknowledge that who you are as an individual is being influenced by the system that you grew up in. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey and dysfunctional families. What family constellations does is it expands it beyond just, who was in your home when you were growing up to the extended family. What happened to your grandparents? What happened to your uncles and cousins? And everyone in this system is affecting everyone within the system. So that's family constellations. Internal family systems is looking at the family within an individual. Family constellations is looking at the individual within a family. What they share in common is the idea of looking at systems. One of the criticisms that I have had but have not been able to put words to has been the super individualist nature of much of psychology. It's all between your ears and it's all you. And while that can be a little bit empowering, right? Taking full responsibility can be empowering. It doesn't always give you the tools to figure out, okay, but now what? And it ignores the very real effect that other people have on us, or those voices and experiences that we have internalized within us for various reasons. So I'm very much enjoying digging into internal family systems and family constellations. It's a little weird to do it both simultaneously. And, that's me. That's me. I just love to stick things in my brain and learn new stuff. So one of the most important pieces of both of these systems is the idea of belonging. If you'll remember, I did an episode on Glasser's 5 basic needs, and love and belonging is one of them. Love and belonging is a powerful drive, and it's one of the ones with veto power over the others. We talked about how safety and survival is the basic, and then there's love and belonging. And people will often sacrifice any number of other needs and desires in order to have love and belonging. I don't think it's too hard to look around at the world and the political climate in which we live currently and not notice people making some very strange decisions in order to belong to the group of people that they've identified with. So love and belonging is a primal drive, and both family constellations and internal family systems address this. In internal family systems, which you remember is looking at the family within an individual, one of the rules is that there are no bad parts. Every part of you has a good intention. Every part of you has a good intention. Even the part of you that screams at your boss and gets you fired job after job after job, that part has a good intention. And if we interact with those inner parts with honor and respect and a lack of judgment, we can learn from that part what it's trying to do in favor of the system. So just like every individual has 5 basic needs, every part within that individual is trying to meet at least one of those basic needs. And those parts that we consider the most problematic still have a good intention. Most of the time, they are trying to keep you safe, allow you to survive, or get you love and belonging. Another big one that comes up is freedom, power. The 5 basic needs are survival, belonging, freedom, power, and enjoyment. So your parts have good intentions to try to meet one of those needs or more. So in internal family systems, we know that there are no bad parts. Even parts that have some pretty extreme behaviors or expressions are doing so with an intention to get one or more of those basic needs met. And in family constellations, the idea is that everyone belongs. Everyone belongs. And anyone who is exiled from the system, And oh, by the way, in internal family system, you also talk about exiles. But anyone who is exiled or excluded from the family system still exerts an influence on the family system, on the family constellation. And because they are exiled or excluded, their influence is less likely to be harmonious and beneficial to the whole system. So, what could that mean? We never talk about Aunt Joni, who ran off with the mayor's husband, and it was a big scandal in the town, and so now no one talks about them. Did you see the movie Encanto, the Disney movie Encanto? Encanto, for those of you who were just had your ears brutalized by me saying Encanto, Encanto. There's a song in it called We Don't Talk About Bruno. And in this family system, there's a sickness, and part of it is because we don't talk about Bruno. Bruno, who belongs in this family system, has been exiled from the family system. And so healing comes whether you're talking about the family within you or you within the family, when everyone has their belonging. And this can even include your ancestors. And this might be a little woo-woo for some of you, but if you just think about it epigenetically, if we don't acknowledge and honor and appreciate and learn the lessons from all of our parts or all of our family members, it's a disruption in the harmony of the system and causes dysfunction. It causes illness. It causes imbalance. So one of the challenges that I have had as I've been working on myself and integrating myself, and trigger warning, this might be difficult for some of you to hear. It involves non-consensual sex. So in my lineage, as an African American who is the descendant of slaves, in my lineage includes a lot of rapists. Many people were born in my lineage to unwilling partners, right? They were not consenting to be impregnated or to impregnate. That was not consensual. And so that means, to the degree that I exiled those members of my system as being heinous or disowning them, I'm allowing a pattern to repeat of disowning parts of myself. It's kind of related to why in divorces, one of the first things they tell you is do not ever badmouth your children's other parent, because that other parent and that other parent's whole family is a part of that child. So when you tell that child your parent is evil, bad, and wrong, you may not mean to, but what you're telling them is that something in them is evil, bad, and wrong. So when we exile a part within us or a part of our family system, we are inviting inharmony, we are inviting unbalance, and we are inviting that toxic behavior involved to repeat itself. If we don't talk about Bruno, then we can't learn from Bruno. We can't integrate Bruno. We can't have his contribution to our family system. And so it's kind of like having, I don't know, like in the solar system, if someone just sort of came and knocked Jupiter out of its orbit, the whole system would go cattywampus and life on this planet would end. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Not the end of life, because you don't talk about your uncle, but the idea that within us, we cannot exile parts, and outside of us, we cannot ignore any parts of our family system, because it has a way of perpetuating the trauma and handing it down your lineage more profoundly by so doing. There's a quote from Jung, which I used to have memorized, which is that when the unconscious does not become conscious, it rules our life and appears as fate. It's talking about integrating that shadow. when it remains unconscious, when a part of us remains exiled, whether it's someone in our family or someone in our inner being, in our bodies, in our minds, that unconsciousness drives behaviors that do not make sense to us. You ever have I don't know why I do that. I can't believe I did that again. There's a part of you that isn't allowed to exist in its proper place. There's a part of you that isn't being heard. There's a part of you that's been disowned or dishonored. And when we begin to use internal family systems or family constellations, let me put a little asterisk here. Internal family systems has a lot of evidence-based studies behind it currently. It's becoming more mainstream all the time. Family constellations is still on the woo-woo side of things. But I would like to remind you that EMDR, which is now everyone's like, oh, EMDR is the best thing ever, was considered quackery for a lot of years until the studies were done. So go fund some family constellation studies so we can integrate it even more into therapy. I lost my train of thought with my little asterisk. But the point being that when you use these techniques to integrate, to do the shadow work, however you do it, in psychoanalysis, you're going to be doing shadow work. In internal family systems, you're going to be talking to those parts that have been, shoved aside or suppressed or ignored because they're, air quotes, bad. When you do the family constellation, you're looking at who or what isn't in their proper place in this family, who doesn't belong. And often it's us. Often we're brought to these therapeutic techniques because we feel like we don't belong. And then you go do a family constellation and you learn that it was never your fault, right? One example might be that you never felt like your mother really loved you. And then you find out that your mother had 4 miscarriages before you were born and was afraid to love you, like was never fully mourned or grieved those other lost children. And you're like, oh, it was never anything that I had done. It was her own grief, something like that. So begin to recognize in yourself, even just this: there are no bad parts, and everyone belongs. Every part of you has a gift and belongs. And everyone in your family system, and that doesn't just include blood relatives, everyone in the systems in which you belong also belongs. And there are no bad parts. Yeah, even that guy. Crazy Uncle Harold, he belongs. He belongs. And if you can find a way, maybe using the forgiveness practice that I shared with you before, to allow it to be okay, to accept the parts of your system, internal or external, that may be kind of troubling, if you can accept them, you begin to have healing that allows their influence on you to be conscious. And when something goes from the unconscious to the conscious, it stops feeling like fate that is controlling you outside of your ability to act. And you begin to be the chooser. You begin to have more choice. There are no bad parts. Everyone belongs, including you. You have no bad parts. Everyone belongs. Everyone belongs, including you. And with that, thank you for listening. And when you begin to have a little conflict with yourself, remind yourself that the parts that are in conflict both have a good intention. You know, the part of you that wants to eat the whole bag of potato chips and the part of you that wants you to drop and do 20 push-ups, both have good intentions, and one is not gooder than the other. There are no bad parts. Everyone belongs. And with that, I wish you this remembrance. Remember, you are whole. There may be a whole village inside of you, and that village makes a whole. You are whole. You are perfect. You are complete. You have permission. You are allowed to. You are worthy and deserving and good enough right here, right now, and for all time to be, do, and have a life so beautiful that it surprises even you. Until next time, you glorious, wonderful being, you.